paradigm we're in now is that we need to continuously look to add value to our organization. And so we need to continuously transform. And that actually means rather than looking at it as a discrete piece of work within the organization, it needs to be looked at quite differently as a number of discrete, iterative projects that come together to meet a desired outcome.
Welcome to The Adaptive Organisation, an audio series about why today's businesses must transform at speed to withstand uncertainty. Today we'll discuss why being digital to the core allows businesses to remain competitive in our volatile world. I'm Megan Wright, Senior Editor at Longitude, a Financial Times company, and joining me today to have this conversation is Tristan Rogers, Head of Strategy and Portfolio for Applications and Multi-Cloud at Fujitsu UK. Tristan says the events of the past 18 months have forced businesses to reconsider how they transform, as the need to take a more agile approach has become not only favourable, but necessary for survival.
I think it's about looking at functional areas of your business and understanding how they work, how they operate. Now, what's the total cost of ownership on that? Where's the blockers and constraints from a flexibility and agility perspective? And looking to modernize that piece as a whole, rather than just the technology or rather than just the people or just the process. But how do you look at that as a whole entity within your organization and move that forwards and do that across your organization piece by piece?
How, if at all, has this role that technology plays in enabling adaptability changed since the onset of the COVID crisis? And what sorts of trends are you seeing really come to the fore right now?
So some sectors, they've been able to continue in some ways as normal, but things like enabling their employees to work from home, enabling a broad geographic base of workers, enabling them to stay connected is the underpinning requirements of technology during the pandemic. But some of those industries that have been quite starkly affected, like retail, for example, if your customer base is going through digital channels rather than whereas before they would have gone through physical channels, you may not have seen the demand placed on those systems previously. So how do we make sure they're resilient? Do that with the utmost security. That becomes a priority. But some of the feedback we have had is particularly a lot of the customers that are working in the IT sectors or in the IT within a customer, they've had to move mountains over the last 9 to 12 months to enable these things to happen, to enable people to work from home, to enable the flexibility of their systems to enable a large audience to access it. And actually that's meant that the expectations now on IT and IT within a customer organization has actually changed. And there's a heightened expectation of what IT and the IT organization within the customer organization can deliver within the timescales.
How is this all impacting the role of the IT department? We know traditionally that this is a function that's perhaps been the gatekeeper, for instance. What are some of the, new roles that IT as a function is moving into? And what are some of the traditional kind of core tenets of the function that we're perhaps moving away from in order to realize this new technology transformation?
There's a few trends that we are seeing, and I think it comes back to what you deem what IT and technology is there to do. Previously, I think, before digital, so this isn't necessarily COVID related, but before digital, IT was seen as a productivity aid. It was an ability to enable you to become more productive. So when you looked at that as an organization, you looked at that as a cost to your business, a cost of doing business, essentially. And we've all seen like the IT crowd and those sorts of programs where IT are locked in the basement. What we're seeing is technology being lifted out of the basement, and the IT organization being lifted out of the basement and being placed inside the business. So the IT organization and the business organization coming together to form one organization, because actually through that construct, it enables you to act and respond much faster to what's going on in your external environment. So if we think about the need to become adaptable to an ambiguous environment and an ambiguous external factors impacting upon your organization, you need to be able to kind of pivot and dodge those changes as they occur. Now, if you bring IT and the business together, you can do that much faster.
I was reading a report that Fujitsu recently published, and I know that the research in it, you found that almost 2/3 of businesses believe moving faster requires them to actually scrap their existing transformation strategy and replace it with something completely new. So I guess I'm interested to understand to what extent you're seeing that playing out in the market. And really, what does this mean in terms of the next, let's say, 12 to 18 months as organizations now start to look at how technology can help them not only to adapt in the face of uncertainty, but to actually recover and potentially to thrive off the back of the COVID crisis?
That statistic was really interesting, and it is something we've seen borne out in our day-to-day conversations with customers. And it's moving from transformation being seen as something that is a start and stop to something that's integral within your organization. So we've always seen transformation. We think about projects and programs. And so we're going to do a large scale transformation. There'll be a 3-year refresh or 5-year refresh or infrastructure transformation, infrastructure modernization. The paradigm we're in now is that we need to continuously look to add value to our organization. And so we need to continuously transform. And that actually means rather than looking at it as a discrete piece of work within the organization, it needs to be looked at quite differently as, a number of discrete iterative projects that come together to meet a desired outcome and one that never stops. And I think that's the distinct difference.
It's a good point, actually. In the same report, I note that you've actually said to solve and simplify complexity, first you have to understand it. So tell me what sort of complexity you're referring to there, especially in the context of the technology transformation we're talking about. And how can organizations actually go about understanding what that complexity is and where it lies within their business?
The complexity is born out of what we call organizational and technical debt. So over the years, as organizations, we've learned and enhanced and changed and added and taken away technology and structures and processes and approval processes and all these little bits that add up to a really, really complex way of working and a complex technological landscape and a complex set of processes. What we need to do sometimes, I think, is take that step back and have a look at what we have across our organization and ask ourselves, is that valid for what we need to do today? So a lot of times, a good example of organizational debt is risk averseness. So we've had to be risk averse in the past because maybe our IT and our technology wasn't as resilient as it is today.
How can leaders strike a balance between paying back that technical debt, which I'm imagining can be quite costly and time consuming, and meeting customer demands through new technologies, products and services?
So that's a really, really hard harmony to get right because you have the demands from your business. The attraction is there to go straight to the growth and to the growth opportunity, which is through working with the business, through building new revenue streams, through building new solutions that reach new audiences. And you absolutely need to do that because you need to focus on growing the business. But at the same time, that technical debt holds the business back as well. And quite often it will mean, if you build your house on sand, it's going to sink. So you need to find that balance where you're able to serve the requirements of what we have now, but at the same time keep the bigger picture in front and center of mind to make sure that we are planning for the longer term as well.
Are there any sectors that you think are doing this particularly well at the moment? I mean, based on everything that you've seen and the customers that you're working with.
There are examples in every sector, I would say. I've been really impressed with some of the work that the public sector are doing in this space. One of the sectors that's really embraced the cloud. And if you look at a number of the systems that we probably access as citizens every day, a number of those systems are now on cloud, and that actually means that those systems have improved dramatically. If you look at financial services, I think that's a really interesting use case because you're seeing the disruption happen in that industry through the banks that have been, the small banks that have been stood up and then been born out of applications and apps on your phones, the Revolut and Monzos of this world. really transforming the way that you engage and the way that you manage your finances. And actually that's causing the larger financial or traditional financial institutions to respond.
What are some of the investments that organizations should be making now to ensure that they can meet future uncertainty head on? And perhaps more importantly, who within the organization should be taking responsibility for these changes to bring their organization into this adaptable era?
It really does come back to where you are as an organization. But I think if you can honestly ask yourself the question, am I structured in the right way to be adaptable? Am I able to respond to an ever increasing challenge of changing customer needs, changing expectations, increased demands on speed and new services and new solutions? It comes back to the old traditional, I think, people, process and technology, and its understanding, which of those levers is the one that you wish to pull, which will give you the best advantage moving forwards.
I think that's a really good note to end on. Tristan, thanks very much for your time.
Thank you.
This interview is part of Fujitsu's campaign on organizational adaptability. It is produced by Longitude, a Financial Times company, in partnership with Fujitsu. Thanks for listening.